Hey, so today we're gonna talk about just 2 design tips, and what's gonna be funny about them is that they contradict one another. So one of those tips tells you to do something, and then the other one tells you not to do it. Who's right? Well, it turns out that they're both right, because it all depends on the context, the user group, and a lot of different factors. And this exercise is supposed to show you that these tips are not completely always universal. They may work 99% of the time, but there may be this one time where they simply won't work, and that's okay. You need to research and you need to be aware of that. We found out during our study on over 5,000 users that adding a little chevron to the right side of a button actually enforces the message. So people click on that button a little bit faster and they are a little bit more convinced of what they're doing, which is good, which is what we want, because we want to increase that conversion and we want them to click on the button. Basically, that's always the goal of any user interface. There is always some end button at the end that when you click it, somebody gets paid, and that makes this whole industry going. We tested it on 5,000 users and it had pretty high accuracy, and it actually had a pretty big effect because over 70% of those users had really faster response times compared to the control group with that chevron in place. So yay, awesome, right? We found something that works, let's just use it everywhere now. And it apparently doesn't work that way. So this is what I want you to think about when looking at design tips, that they might not be a one-size-fits-all and they might not work in every possible scenario. So the counterexample is this. One of my friends is running a successful internet business and he's experimenting a lot with the stuff that he's doing. So of course, when he heard that this little chevron on the buttons is increasing conversion, he decided to A/B test it on his group of users. And his group is pretty unique because this is mostly non-tech savvy people, a little bit older, like above 50 years old, and they are used to some specific UX and UI patterns. So after he tested it on a group of a similar size, he realized that adding this little chevron to the button actually decreases conversion. So in his case, it had the opposite effect. Having just the label on the button without any extra visuals was easier to process for that particular group. So who's right here? Well, everyone. And that's the beauty of doing research, and that's the beauty of really understanding what design tips are. Design tips are something that comes from the context of the research that somebody has made. Well, unless you stole them from Instagram, but I can't help you if you did. In a best case scenario, those tips should be done based on research. And we have 2 tips that basically contradict each other, and 2 different groups, because one group is pretty narrow group of older non-tech savvy people, and then the other test has been done on a wider population group, which of course also included older non-tech savvy people. So what you need to be aware of in this case is that always do your research even if something is completely obvious. There is a lot of those good practices that you can use, and of course use them. Use those tips to your advantage, but always test after you release. So if you show something new to the users, if you show an improvement in what you think is the user experience there, always test it, see what happens, see if it really improves or it actually has the opposite effect. Maybe it's gonna break something. And don't trust the tips just because somebody wrote them, because those tips might only work for them and not necessarily for your project. So bottom line is this: don't trust the tips with like everything you have. Always test them and always try to use your own bullshit detector to actually see if something is a true tip or if it's just something recycled over and over on Instagram. Because if it's the latter, you might be actually putting yourself at risk of lower conversion and not as good of an interface in the end. So yeah, always do your research. And that's it for today. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, click the like button, and if you haven't already, click subscribe, and I'm gonna catch you guys in the next one. Cheers, have a great day.